I was running late, as usual. Life felt like a constant rush, pulling me in every direction except where I needed to be. The station was a blur of movement and noise, a chaotic symphony of clacking heels, distant announcements and impatient murmurs. That day, I barely made it there. Weaving through the crowd on autopilot, my mind a million miles away, lost in thoughts of work, deadlines and the usual chaos. It was one of those days when everything felt urgent, yet nothing seemed important. I was late, again, and barely registered the faces around me, my focus solely on the next task. But as I navigated the crowd, something caught my eye. She sat on a bench near the edge of the platform, her gaze fixed on something far beyond the tracks. There was an air of stillness about her, as if the world had slowed down around her. She looked out of place in the busy station, like a painting hung in the wrong gallery. As I passed by, I noticed her hands. She was holding a small piece of paper, crumpled and worn, like it had been read 100 times. For a moment I slowed down, something pulling me toward her. I couldn't explain it, just a feeling like I was meant to notice her. I don't know why, but I stopped. I didn't have time to spare, but something made me sit down on the bench next to her. She didn't look at me, didn't even seem to notice that I was there. She just stared at that piece of paper, her fingers tracing the edges, as if it held the answers to something she was too afraid to ask. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended, though I didn't expect a response. She didn't, not at first, but after a moment she glanced at me, her eyes red and tired. There was a quiet sadness in them, one that made my heart tighten. "I'm waiting," she said softly. "For what?" The question slipped out before I could second-guess it. She seemed to gather her thoughts, her fingers tracing the edges of the crumpled paper. "For someone who may never come." Her words hung in the air between us, heavy and fragile. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know her story, didn't know who she was waiting for, but something about the way she said it felt too familiar. I wanted to tell her that I understood, that I knew what it felt like to wait for something or someone who might never arrive. I knew the feeling of holding on to hope, even when it seemed like the universe was indifferent. But the words wouldn't come. So we sat there in silence, two strangers sharing a moment neither of us had expected. After a while, I knew I had to leave. My train was pulling in, and the world was beckoning me back to its usual madness. As I stood up, I glanced at her one last time, my words feeling both inadequate and sincere. "I hope they show up," I said, uncertain whether I meant it for her or for myself. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Me too," she responded. I left the station feeling a strange mix of emotions. Though I never saw her again, she often occupies my thoughts, sitting on that bench, waiting for someone who might never come. I can't help but wonder how many of us are like her, holding on to hope, even when we know deep down that what we're waiting for may never arrive. Yet we cling to that hope, defying the odds. Thank you for watching aikdastaan, where every tale is a testament to the human spirit and every voice resonates with the truth as they perceive it.